While the Phoenix Suns are sitting at 4-1 on the season, there is one question that seems like it has been on Suns Twitter, Suns community, on their mind all the time. And we're going to get into it on another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. And of course, we're coming to you live from Studio K, presented by Circle K. Join the Inner Circle for free today. Download the Circle K app and save yourself some money. We're talking Suns basketball, so I brought a new friend to Southwest Bias, making his debut on the program. It is our new Suns host, a basketball extraordinaire, a mind that is, Here's operating on a different level. And if you need proof, check out some of the content he's put up on our YouTube page. It's Stephen PridGeon-Garner. Stephen, how you doing, man?
I'm blessed, man. How you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm good. I am putting on the role of a heel today. I'm stepping outside of my comfort zone, and I'm paying homage to the previous iteration of the show, which was like a classic sports hot take debate show, right? Because what we're talking about today is the case for Bradley Beal to come off the bench for the Phoenix Suns. Now, my disclaimer to everything that I am about to say in this episode is that as of right now in this moment, if you ask me, would you bench Bradley Beal? I would say no. That being said, I do believe that there are some arguments on the opposite side that are getting dismissed or not given enough credit that do have tangible positive impacts to a basketball team. So are you ready to do this thought experiment with me?
Let's work.
Okay. I'm going to give you the floor. I would like you to almost like in trial, present an opening statement as to why it is a bad idea to move Bradley Beal to the bench and start either Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale.
Well, thank you for giving me the floor. I'll start with Bradley Beal. A player that's firmly still in the middle of the prime of his athletic career, in the prime of his scoring, in terms of what he does from all three levels, the ways that he operates on the floor. He's lacking absolutely nothing in terms of what his peak, in terms of how he operates on the floor, could possibly be in terms of being optimized. That thing being taken into account, let's move on to the next. A multi-time All-Star, a player that's led this league in scoring, and led this league in scoring while it's in the middle of the scoring bump that's really just rapidly evolved the way that the game is played and where shots are taken from, the value of those shots, all of those things. He checks off all of those boxes. The last thing that I'll bring, and then we can kind of dive into more, he's brought to this team to be the third best player, to be in the starting units, in the closing units, sometimes the second best player. In some matchups, depending on how teams defend, he might be the best player. And he just might operate perfectly to solve whatever riddles opposing teams are presenting to the Suns. All of those reasons in succession with one another is why I just don't see why he could possibly come off the bench for this team at this present moment in time. I rest my case.
Okay. My counter argument to you is not to say that anything that you said is wrong. But merely that if you shift perspective, you can see a solution, okay? And that solution being Bradley Beal being the bar none best sixth man in the NBA and possibly that the NBA has ever seen, okay? Bradley Beal is the Phoenix Suns' third best player. Bradley Beal also has a skill set that overlaps with the Suns' first or second best player in Devin Booker. Replacing Bradley Beal in the starting lineup with a player like a Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale. I'm taking Grayson Allen out of this conversation. I don't think that there's an argument for that at this moment in time. Realistically makes the starting lineup a quote-unquote better fit around the two superstars that are already in it and even the two adjacent pieces in Tyus Jones and Jusuf Nurkic. Let's talk about Ryan Dunn specifically. Ryan Dunn is, if I say the best defender on this team 5 games into his rookie season, would that be an outlandish statement?
I would say he's 1A or 1B. I can't give him outright number one.
Okay, so 1A or 1B, right?
Yeah.
Again,
Yep.
That's still good.
For 100%.
Has Ryan Dunn not been one of the most consistent, again, through 5 games, one of the most consistent 3-point shooters on this team?
He has been.
Okay. Royce O'Neale is one of the best defenders on this team.
The other half of the best defender on this team.
He is one of the best connectors on this team. And we have been absolutely impressed with his ability to do it all and to fit in. If we take what we've seen out of Devin Booker against the Clippers, where he's in attack mode nonstop, and we allow him at the beginning of the game to not even entertain the idea of, hey, there's another scoring guard in this lineup that needs their touches, that needs their moments. It's your time. And whoever is right next to you slotting in that third is going to take who you would be guarding before and is not going to take any of like your offensive touches away. They're going to shoot open threes and they're going to make the right play. Does that not work? In a vacuum, does that not work? Is that not a really good starting lineup?
It is. It's a very good lineup, and it's almost fail-proof.
So, while Bradley Beal might be, in a vacuum, better than those two players, and not might be, he is better than those two players, is it an asinine argument to say that the Phoenix Suns, as a team, would have a better starting unit without him?
It is asinine for me. And my reasons why, taking shots that will be generated from that starting unit, would you rather Bradley Beal, Royce O'Neale, or Ryan Dunn taking wide open catch and shoot 3-point opportunities on volume?
Oh yeah, I'd rather have Bradley Beal take those shots.
Okay. If you look at it in terms of what each player brings to the table best, whose best skill set is the most prolific on league-wide standards, not specific to the team, on league-wide standards?
Yeah, it's Bradley Beal.
And Bradley Beal scoring, taking on more value than Ryan Dunn's defense and everything on the ancillary end that Royce O'Neale does?
See, that's when you start talking about the context of the team. I think that it is... I think it actually depends on how you look at it, because we talk about it maybe from like a show perspective, right? I think me and you, we fill kind of different roles. You are very much like this analytical basketball mind, and we look at the game the same way, but the way that you articulate it and the way that you break it down is more similar to like kind of what a Gerald does, right? And there is immense value in that. And it's something that like I could try to do, but you know, doesn't really fit my skill set as well. So my addition to the show, while maybe not being a prolific scorer, 3-and-D, hard-nosed defense, connector, actually enhances the two prolific scorers because I'm not operating in the same territory. So from a league-wide perspective, Bradley Beal is more valuable, right? From a microcosm of this team, which is all that I care about. I don't care about the ego. I don't care about the name on the back of the jersey. I don't care about what you did in your career. I don't care about how much money you make. I care about what is the best fit for this team. I think there's a realistic outcome where, again, we're taking a lot of ifs here. If Bradley Beal is bought into the 6-man role and continues to get the same amount of shots and minutes, which I do think is possible off of the bench for him, I think there's just a world where when you see Devin Booker and Kevin Durant get into rhythms early, this Suns team is way better. They don't have to fight and claw back. And it's possible that having Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale in that starting lineup allows those two to get cooking, and then you bring Bradley Beal in as the counterpunch off the bench. What are teams going to do with that? What are teams going to do with that? So I think your question of what's more prolific, Bradley Beal in this sense, or Ryan Dunn, Royce O'Neale, I think when it comes down to the Phoenix Suns, it's a lot closer of a conversation than it is like if we're just ranking the best players in the NBA.
So my rebuttal to that would be, look at the Suns team context. In terms of their identity, do they lean more to the offensive end or the defensive end based off of your observations?
See, my gut says offensive end, but honestly, their defense has been incredible so far this season. But I'll say offensive end. I'll say offensive end.
The defense has been good. It's been better than expected at this point in the season. But your 3 best players are all offensive minded, first, second, and third. Your identity for your team is going to be more lenient on the offense than the defense. That's like a non-negotiable type of scenario. They're just pinned in the pigeonhole there, rightfully so. My point being with that, if you're playing to your team's identity, put it in football terms. If you have a very good pass-catching running back and you also have a bruiser running back and you run a lot of offense where you're in spread, you got 5 receivers on the field at times, you try to hit halfback screens, are you going to be more lenient in using that hybrid running back that can get the ball in space and do things to manipulate your offense? Or are you going to be more heavy on using that running back that's going to be doing some more of the nitty-gritty type of things? Is it going to be more scenario-based for you?
I think it's more scenario-based for that.
So that's what I'm getting to. So you get in situations, your identity is offense. You're going to go with your offensive-minded players in the starting group. However, the caveat to that is just because you start a game does not mean you have to finish a game.
Yeah.
You can easily slot, and we've already seen it in 5 games this season a couple of times. Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale, both closing at times. And you see the results that gets. The team is at their best statistically right now when those two are on the floor in addition to the big three, whether that be a small ball iteration or 2 of the big 3 on the floor with those 2 in the center or also Iguodaro. That's the template there. The optionality is that's the big nugget, the golden nugget to take away from it all. That being said, though, I think you have to get to it the right way. I don't think you can put your blue collar chips to the forefront and still expect for them to have the same value when they're playing in a different role than they were brought into this team to be on. Same thing goes for Bradley Beal.
Is it a different role for them though?
Yeah, it would be.
I mean, Ryan Dunn has started multiple games already this season because Bradley Beal has been injured. And sure, that's not the bench role he's been in, but his role when he's on the court is the same as Royce O'Neale. You're going to defend your butt off. You're going to take open shots and you're going to play smart basketball. Whether you're starting or you're coming off the bench, that's your role. That's not changing. It's not like, hey, Royce O'Neale, I'm going to ask you to be Bradley Beal in the starting lineup, and I'm not going to ask Bradley Beal to be Royce O'Neale if he comes off the bench. Right? You are still going to be inherently who you are, and we are going to maximize your abilities in the best way possible. That's kind of the point where, again, I want to remind people, I agree with Stephen, right? Like, I agree with what you are saying, but I do think that there are certain just ways that people are discounting this conversation because starting Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale and allowing Bradley Beal to do what he does best, right? You say it's all about the process and how you get there and how you close and everything. If Bradley Beal is able to observe the game, watch and pick apart, hey, this is how the flow of the game is doing. I am one of the best scorers, one of the best minds that this league has seen. Like, sure, maybe he's not going to be one of the greatest of all time, like when you talk about the greatest of the greats, but there have been few and far in between on this planet that can put the ball in the bucket like Bradley Beal, right? And the ones that can are just as rare as him. But if he is able to analyze the game outside of it, be able to pick and choose his spots, still play with one or both of the big 3, and come off the bench in a way that keeps a defense honest and is able to, like Bud, as he likes to push a lot of buttons, just kind of keep that like knockout punch as, hey, I'm throwing him in there and you're just going to rip. Right? Like, we've seen it with worse players like a Jamal Crawford, right? Or Lou Williams, somebody that comes off of the bench and is just really good. And I know that was a long time ago. Even the James Harden thing was a long time ago. But there is a benefit to simplifying your starting lineup, simplifying your bench lineup, because Bradley Beal's role and something that he's been struggling with since he got here is like, where do you fit in? Where do you hit the gas? Where do you not hit the gas? I think it becomes a lot simpler for him if he comes off the bench.
I don't completely agree with that, and I don't completely agree with it because, for one, I feel like that's more so reps, whether it was Booker being hurt last season and Beal being in the lineup or vice versa. They just didn't have the requisite amount of reps together to have a big 3 context clicking the way that it needs to. That being said, a large part of that also is on the former head coach of the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah.
And not optimizing the top 3 pieces, not just 1, not just 1.5, not just 2, not just 2.5. Optimizing all 3 to get the absolute most out of the roster. That's on him. Now that onus is put on Mike Budenholzer, which I think is the overarching challenge of the season. So rather than shifting your entire context of your team, we talked about what their identity is, the traits that they play to more heavily than others. Instead of shifting all of that and then having to reconfigure around it, you have your template. You dictate to your opponents because of the prolific nature of all three of your top three players. Figure out how to use them in unison and get the absolute most out of all three to fit this particular team. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Is it guaranteed to have success to the extent that they desire, which is hoisting the Larry O'Brien trophy? No, there's no guarantee in that.
No.
But the guarantee that you have to have is that you're going to play to your identity. Your team knows that these are the three. This is the pecking order. Everything funnels through them. And then the last big thing in all of that, Mike Budenholzer has to optimize Bradley Beal. He's starting to do it with Kevin Durant already, getting him to buy into movement, flowing off of screens. Devin Booker getting into the same thing now the last 2 games. Now the caveat is figuring out how to get all of that in addition to Bradley Beal.
Is there a world, though, where you can achieve what you're saying, where Bud can find a way to maximize his big three, to maximize his 3 best players, but do it in this way? And hear me out. If you start the game with just Devin Booker and Kevin Durant on the floor, and you get them in a rhythm, like we saw with Book against the Clippers. Obviously, KD, only 18 points last night. You would want to see more out of him. But again, that's more of an anomaly than him scoring over 20, getting to 25, 30. We know who Kevin Durant is. We know what he can bring.
Yep.
Rhythm or no rhythm.
Yep.
But getting Book in that space, operating in that space, having Kevin Durant on the floor. And then let's say Book is cooking. You sub out one of Dunn, O'Neale, or Jones, whatever the matchup dictates, right? And you put Bradley Beal in. And in this scenario, this is a bought-in Bradley Beal, right? And that's the only way that this works. The only way that this thought process is remotely possible, or you can even consider the fact that it works, is the fact that Bradley Beal's bought into this, right? So that's where I'm operating in right now. Bradley Beal's fully bought in, and I'm still going to get a similar amount of minutes. I'm still going to play with the stars. I'm still going to play with the bench. But now I know when I go in, I have one job, and that job is to get Bradley Beal in rhythm. I don't have to worry about getting Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a rhythm to start the game. I don't have to worry about setting up Jusuf Nurkic for a couple easy 2s. I don't have to worry about any of that, right? I don't have to worry about defending probably the best player on the other team for the starting of the game. Like, they're already worn down because they're playing against Ryan Dunn, and heck, maybe Bradley Beal subs in for Tyus Jones, and you're talking about Beal, Book, Dunn, KD, and Nurk. Right? So you're simplifying his role in the sense that you now have one tunnel vision goal, and that is you get Bradley Beal going. You put your impact on the game. You come in firing whatever you like. Maybe it's not, hey, Bradley Beal needs to come in and take 20 shots. Maybe it's, hey, I'm subbing in. Book's coming off the floor. KD hasn't gotten a lot of shots. I'm noticing that because I'm Bradley Beal and I'm one of the best players in the NBA. What I'm going to do is put pressure on the defense now, get Kevin Durant open, get Kevin Durant a rhythm. Like, there are options and ways for Bud to push that button and to move those puzzle pieces around that work. And if it's all bought in, like you said, when it gets to the end of the game, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations about if Luka Doncic needs to be guarded and Bradley Beal is not in a rhythm. Ryan Dunn's probably going to be put in that game, right? Because that's what that matchup dictates. You're not bending to the will of other NBA teams by putting Bradley Beal to the bench. For me, in this situation, for it to work, you're actually doing the opposite. Because who the hell would bench Bradley Beal? Right? Bending to the will of everybody else is saying, these are our 3 highest paid players. We're going to start all 3 of them no matter what. Even if, and there is, some overlapping as far as skill sets go. But if you stagger it, which they have to do in the starting lineup anyway, and you start with a more concerted focus, you get Book and KD in rhythm, then you bring Beal in and have him fill whatever hole needs to be filled instead of figuring it out on the fly. I get that math. I see why people think that would work. And the point about Budenholzer, and the last thing I'll say on this before we get to a break, is we've seen with Jusuf Nurkic, we've seen with Ryan Dunn. If something works or if something isn't working, Mike Budenholzer does not wait to figure that out and to make a shift. And I do think some people are discounting if Bradley Beal misses a significant portion of time and Ryan Dunn or Royce O'Neale, but right now it's Ryan Dunn, gets significant minutes in the starting lineup and there's chemistry and they rip off, let's say 70, 75% of wins with that lineup, you can't not think about that. especially if you bring Beal back and that falls off.
I hear you.
Right? Okay, so we're not going to talk about realistically if this were to happen, but I want to hear your thoughts about, let's say Mike Budenholzer wakes up the next day and just goes, I'm going to do this. I want to hear your thoughts on how could he make that work? And we're going to do it after I remind you guys that this episode of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Branded Bills. Elevate your brand with Branded Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Whether you need snapbacks, truckers, fitted beanies, or tees, Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style, and they can make your gear custom as well. Your own brand on your own bills. They have partnerships with fantastic schools like Arizona State University, and, you know, they do charity work with the University of Arizona as part of their campus collection as well. They're a local company out of Mesa, Arizona, and you can get $20% off your first order. Head to brandonbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off that first order. Also, check out Empire today. Don't let your floors be dirty and old and they don't match your place. You know, one of the things that I actually look at when I go into businesses is I look up, I look at their ceiling, I look down, I look at their floor. And you can tell a lot about a business by if they have nice, clean floors and ceilings. And you don't want to be the business that Erik Ruby walks into and goes, ugh. Really? Because we used to have some old floors in here, man. We got it fixed up by Empire today. Our Studio A out there is fantastic flooring from them, and it's really changed just the whole vibe and the whole layout of our studio, even if you don't see it on screen. And also, you want to save $350? Again, burying the lead. You can schedule a free in-home estimate today, and all listeners can receive a $350 off discount. But use promo code PHNX. Restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. Okay, I'm going to ask you to go out of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say everything that we've been talking about, those points are moot, done. Bradley Beal has been announced as a Super Six man for the Phoenix Suns. How does it work?
Well, I mean, he's given freedom coming off the bench, but that freedom is no different than when he gets staggered with wings and a center after they transition from their initial starting unit when he is starting. So I think it's gonna be a little tough because his rhythm is gonna be just a different type of build up to it. But to see it work, I don't think it will be hard. He's a player that's gonna figure it out, especially if he's going up against second unit players more often than he is going up against starting unit players. So as far as the template for success there, you can't ignore it. But I just don't feel like that is going to be as prolific as when he stays in a starting unit, though. That's just my 2 cents.
I totally get it. I completely get it. And again, I am playing a devil's advocate right now. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't interested.
Mm-hmm.
I would like in a world with no consequences, I'd like to see what it looks like. I'd like to see a world where Ryan Dunn gets a start next to Book and KD, and all the things that we talked about before in this episode come true. They get more freed up, and I would like to see, if I could choose, a fired up, focused Bradley Beal playing the same type of rotation minutes, just allotted differently in order for, like you said, to give him more freedom. Mm-hmm. I'd be lying if I didn't say I'd like to see it, especially considering that we've seen success with this Ryan Dunn starting lineup. They're 2-0 with Ryan Dunn starting. And considering the fact that he might just get better, too. I think that's also on the table, even if it's not just from 3, but seeing him evolve his game. I don't think we see it unless Ryan Dunn starts playing like out of his mind. Out of like clear, surefire rookie of the year, no question about it. Mm-hmm. Right? Because in reality, everything that you said, where you have your 3 best players, you're going to play your 3 best players, and having Dunn and Royce off the bench in their own right is a massive asset. That's the reality. That's where we're going to live in. But if I could pull the strings, I'd pull them a little bit. Mm-hmm. I just want to see.
I hear you.
That's just me. I just what if, right? Like, what if Ryan Dunn's the perfect fit? And what if Bradley Beal's the perfect 6-man? You take money and status out of it. They fit those roles somewhat in their archetype. I'm interested.
It's a thought, but rarely do I entertain things that I don't think are like realistic as far as that goes. But if we're delving into that, then what does that do to Grayson Allen? because he's the fourth or fifth highest paid player on the roster.
Sure.
Then what? Like there's trickle down.
Why are we only breaking it down based off money? Right? It's Grayson Allen has not been one of the 7 or 8 best players on this team this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can be.
But past the money part, that's just a piece.
Yeah.
How does it look with those two in a bench unit in addition to obviously Royce or Ryan, Monte? Mason,
if you're starting one of Royce or Ryan, right, you're still bringing one off the bench. You're most likely going to still bring Royce off the bench, right? So you still have your defensive grittiness, and Grayson has actually been way better on defense this year than he has been in offense. If anything, that's a great fit around Bradley Beal. You can bring all 3 of them in at the same time. Like, they have chemistry. They actually play well off of each other. They fill 3 different positions. Honestly, it might actually make things easier for Grayson Allen because there's somebody with more attention coming off the bench offensively, because it's a guard as well. I mean, Monte Morris is your lead guard off the bench right now. Bradley Beal and Grayson Allen's a little bit different than a Monte Morris and a Grayson Allen, right? And I know we're just talking about it like in a vacuum, but you're starting a forward. Grayson Allen suits into this pseudo guard forward role for the Suns. It kind of frees up a spot for him. It frees up a little bit of the rotation to be played with, and it might actually open up the court for him too. Get him some more open shots. Allow him to still make his impact defensively. I don't think that move hurts Grayson Allen.
I think it does.
How so?
For one, there's overlap between both of those two. Obviously, Bradley's the better player. That's unquestionable. But there's a lot of overlap in terms of what we saw them when we saw them at their best last season. Grayson was running a lot of the same actions that Bradley wasn't when he was hurt last season, especially when he started hitting that stride and started getting the recognition as an elite sniper, the best sniper last season. He was in a lot of those same spots that Bradley Beal is in. So how does that look when they're both on the floor and now you also have a point guard? So now neither one of those two has the ball in their hands to the extent that they did last season for the template that Mike Budenholzer has in place. I'm just saying, if the reason for taking Bradley Beal out of the starting lineup and moving him to the 6-man role is because of overlap with Devin Booker and to lesser extents Kevin Durant, there's still overlap. That overlap issue still presides in the reserve unit as well.
So I guess then the question is, would you rather the overlap impact to Grayson Allen or impact to Devin Booker?
I don't think it has to impact Devin Booker. That's my.
I don't know if
I
get what you're saying.
Yeah.
The argument of overlap, I feel like maybe not as much so in that starting lineup. Like, if this is a winning formula, and we'll wrap this up here soon because we can't go too long. I think this is a wonderful conversation. If this formula is winning, if Ryan Dunn starting or Royce O'Neale starting is a winning combination, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm not really worried as much about taking Grayson Allen out of his role. I think in an ideal world, you'd like to maximize Grayson Allen. I think this team can be at its best when they maximize Grayson Allen. But if in order for them to operate at the highest level, he's not as featured as much in an offense, or Bradley Beal is the one who's taking reps and minutes away from him, like, I feel for him. I would like for that not to happen, but that's the way that it is. Right? If Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neale and Bradley Beal are playing better than Grayson Allen in roles that Grayson Allen would fill anyway, I'm sorry, man. Like, that's just how it goes. Not everybody can be a huge contributor on a good team. Mm-hmm. I think Grayson certainly has the skills to do so, and I think people are being a little bit rushed to be out on him. But putting myself in the shoes of what if you make this move, if Grayson Allen is the one who out of all of this is like, okay, Grayson Allen takes the hit, but Bradley Beal and Ryan Dunn and Royce O'Neale are all fine, then I think you still make that move. Mm-hmm. I just think you do. So what do you guys think? Let us know down in the comments below. Stephen is breaking down basketball on another level right here. There is a breakdown, including, plays that Royce O'Neale is involved in a lot on this channel about a Phoenix Suns play that gets somebody open every single time. Stephen is also, of course, on PHNX Suns every single day of the week. I am also on PHNX Suns. We're bringing you live shows during the week, pregame and postgame shows as well, along with right here on Southwest Bias. So you want to follow along with all that, you can follow our show at PHNX_Suns. You can follow Stephen at Stephen PG3. You can follow myself at ERIKRUBY on Twitter, and you can catch me on PHNX Sun Devils 5 days a week as well. And we'll be back next week for a probably less divisive edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.